Welcome to another episode of Band Director Boot Camp, the podcast with productivity and wellness tips for busy band directors. I'm your host, Lesley Moffat, and I'm really grateful to be sharing this platform with you. As busy band directors, we know you don't have lots of time to watch lengthy professional development webinars, so we share 20-minute tidbits with takeaways you can use to support you in this awesome profession in a healthy way. And you guys, I'm so excited. Who's here with me today? I'm kind of a little starstruck, I'm not going to lie, because I have Scott Sheehan, our national president of NAfME. He's also educational consultant at Consilmer, and he's the director of bands and music department chair at Hollidaysburg Area Senior High School in Pennsylvania. And he has a million more hats that he wears. But I'm just so excited that he's here because we're here to talk about productivity and wellness. And he's got some resources that he can share with us because he's been around the block a few times and he knows what he's talking about. Scott Sheehan, thank you for being here today.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure and honor to be here with you.
I remember meeting you. I did one of the keynotes at your conference in Pennsylvania. You were so genuine, and just it's been fun to run into you and see your work, and I'm just in awe of all the things you're doing and holding us together after we've come out of this weird time in education, and it's still kind of weird, I'm not going to lie. So but you've been doing this for a while as a band director, music teacher, and the like. And so before we dive in and start talking about some of the resources that you can share with us and some tips and the like, give us a little background about how you decided to become a band director and do all the things you're doing.
Sure. I'll give you the real high level, quick version of this, but I played the trumpet because my dad played the trumpet. So when I was a little kid, probably 4 years old, I can have memories of my dad playing the trumpet around the house, and I wanted to try it too. And so probably by first or second grade, I was able to get some sounds out and know some fingers to push down. And so when it came time in school to pick an instrument, it just was a natural thing. Of course, I was going to play the trumpet. And from there, I did the typical high school band thing, and we got a new band director when I was a freshman in high school, and he came in young, energetic, lots of new ideas, and I just really connected. And, so the power that one person has to influence somebody else is huge. We hear that all the time. And so a lot of inspiration there. But I can remember the exact day. It was a Tuesday, my junior year in high school in the month of March.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really specific. It was a Tuesday. I'm sitting in the band room, and we were rehearsing On an American Spiritual by David Holsinger. It was about 1:30 in the afternoon. I mean, this is really a vivid memory for me. And I had the most incredible experiences. The music was climaxing towards the end of the piece and everything. I'm playing my trumpet part. And I just had this feeling, this rush. It was like the clouds parted, the sun shone down, that wow moment, that music chose me. I don't think I chose music because I was planning to be an architect. I had all these other plans. My parents had all these other plans for me. And it literally just knocked my socks off. It was the most profound feeling I'd ever had in my life. Like, your purpose is now before you go. I mean, it was literally that impact. Wow. I remember walking home that day sad because it was over, because that moment in time, that incredible experience was over. And I wanted to get back to the band room to have that feeling again, And so in so many ways, my whole career has been chasing that feeling, that experience for my students, not just for me, but for my students, to know that music can change our lives in so many incredible ways that we just don't even expect. When you least expect it, something's going to happen through music. And so much of it from there on out was about the connections and the people. So, I went to Clarion University, which is one of our state schools here in Pennsylvania, got an undergraduate. When I told my parents I wanted to be a band director, they said, "Oh, okay, you need to have a backup plan." So I have a degree in marketing as well, which is helpful because it's recruiting and all those things. Exactly. So in 5 years, I was able to get 2 bachelor's degrees, and started teaching in a very rural school in central Pennsylvania. I had about 30 students when I on the roster, showed up for my first parade, first day on the job. And there were 13 students that showed up. And it wasn't like the 13 gung ho, like, hey, here we go, students. This was 13 kids who parents made them go, and they were defeated. And 8 years later, when I left, there were 188 students in the program in this very, what I would call small rural rural school. And we were just making all kinds of music and loving what we were doing. And we hosted Maynard Ferguson before he had passed at the high school. We had Mike Vax and the Stan Kenton Ghost Band in. We had done all kinds of things. And it was just like we kind of grew together. I was young, trying to cut my chops and being a band director, knowing what was good. And one tidbit that I would share kind of off the bat is surrounding yourself with people who can help and mentor you and guide you. And so I was very young, excited, enthusiastic, certainly, but really didn't know what I didn't know. And I hooked up with a professor, director of bands at Penn State University, Dennis Glocky, and he so graciously took this very young, kind of raw kid who had a lot of enthusiasm and helped me in so many ways to really learn about how I needed to develop my own musicianship, so that as much as I had these ideas and goals and things I wanted to see the students do, I needed to make sure I had the chops and the skills, and that the students had the technique to be able to make the music that we were trying to make together. And to be able to create something. So that was my first 8 years. And then I moved to Hollidaysburg, where I've been here for the last 18. And it has just been an incredible ride here. It's sort of a small town feel, but there's a lot of resource. And I do feel the privilege here of having a lot of support from the administration, my colleagues, the whole community. And we've been fortunate to be one of the best communities for music education and so on. So that's kind of how I kind of fell in love with music and got started. And I've always had this kind of connective thread of service leadership. I'm sure many of your guests, can reference Tim Lotzenheiser in some way or another. Mm-hmm. I know, Lesley, you also have those connections. And I was probably a sophomore in high school, right when Tim was kind of getting his thing going, and I went to a clinic, and that just hit me like a ton of bricks, that this is the way, this to quote the Mandalorian, this is the way. And it really is about service. And so I was a really young teacher when I was asked to get involved in PMEA. And so I did the PMEA district level service, and then the state presidency as a very young teacher, and then Eastern Division, and certainly now the national. And it's always been about the mission for me. It's always been about music and students and making sure that more students have opportunities, because I really believe, and this is something that's come to me recently, is that excellence that we all strive for, whether it's an ensemble or a music class, or we want children to feel that they've contributed, they've made something bigger than themselves with this idea of excellence. But it has to be built on opportunity. And then so often it looks like a triangle where that excellence is smaller at the top and opportunity is wider at the bottom. But what I'd really love us to see is it looks like a giant rectangle where the opportunities exist for everybody to achieve excellence all the way through. And that's really how I've tried to model my program here at Hollidaysburg with my day job, and really what we're trying to strive to do with NAfME as well when we talk about equity and opportunity and representation and some of these concepts that are trying to make sure that students across the country have access, number one, equitable access, certainly, but then also that chance to really achieve something great and be bigger than themselves, and they feel like they've had that significant moment, as I said earlier.
It's life-changing, obviously. I mean, look at you. Yeah. And we all can kind of relate. One of the things that we talked about before we started interviewing here was the NAfME and the like. Some of the things you've been talking about there are how to sustain this profession, from getting into the colleges, which most of our listeners have done and probably have gotten through college. But it's often those first 5 years when teachers come out, new degree, new job, and then it's hard. And if you've been a new teacher in the last 5 years, it's been especially hard. And that's hard to sustain a profession. You're in your 26th year. You are a teacher, a president, a father, a husband, a whole bunch of other things. How do you do this? And what advice would you have for our newer teachers?
Well, I think first and foremost, it takes a village. And I was that young teacher who thought I could conquer the world too. I think we all started that way because, it's what you're built up to do in your degree program. You're built to, okay, you've got your wings, now fly, go. And what I've learned and what I give all my student teachers the advice is draw upon those around you, whether they're mentors that you consider them a confidant, or even if it's the custodian down the hall, or the cafeteria ladies, or the English teacher. I have a great friend who's an English teacher, because we can learn so much about how schools run. We can learn so much about students and education, the big E, capital E education, not just music education, from everyone in our spheres. And, so I think that thinking of you being in this ecosystem of a school is so important, that you're just a piece of that. And so, surrounding yourself with that village, and even if it's, even if you're not the most outgoing person, I totally get the introvert extrovert idea, and everybody's, wherever you're at, that's you, and that's your authentic self, and you should be that. But you can observe, you can take notice of the things. You don't have to necessarily be, hey, I want to come over to your class and watch this or whatever. So I think that's big. I also think, as I mentioned earlier, finding those mentors is huge. Finding teachers, whether maybe it's a college professor or, someone like that, or maybe it's a veteran teacher in the area or a retired teacher in the area. I think there's a lot of value in somebody that's been taught. Your dad's a great example, who's been around for a long time and still has so much to give, because, that's the nature of this idea of servant leadership, is we want to give, we want to share those tricks and tips so that the next generation can learn from us and not have to make the same mistakes, or be as efficient as possible. In today's world, everything is faster paced, and this idea of change is happening over and over and over. In fact, I shared this little tidbit, sorry to kind of take a tangent, but this is interesting. I was at our National Assembly, and I was reading about how fast the information doubles itself. And so in the 60s and 70s, they were saying that about every 12 to 13 months, the amount of information that was created would double itself. And what they're predicting with AI now, that can be 12 hours, that the amount of information that is coming at people in this world, now granted, you're not going to see all of it. You're going to see a slice of it, but 12 hours, we can double the amount of information, they're saying, by 2030. That is incredible to me. And so in this very fast-paced world of change that we live in, I think, my advice to the younger teachers is, take a breath, take notice, look around, find good mentors. And I'm sure that, other people would say that. And I would also say, continue to feed your musical passion. I play in a brass band, and even with the NAfME work and how, that's obviously a lot of time, and my day job, Wednesday nights, they know, don't schedule meetings for me on Wednesday nights. That's my brass band night. In the summers, I play in a community band. I want to continue to feed that part of who I am. And then there are also times where I just think, two other things I'll mention about this, kind of how you sustain through this, is prioritizing, obviously, has to be a big thing. And being present in the moment that you're in. And so I really kind of put those two things together, and I think about compartmentalizing. So now I'm, NAfME president here doing this podcast with you. And when we're finished, I'm going to go back to being dad, and, we're going to go out for a walk with the dogs and chill out for a little bit before it's time to, call it a day. And I think trying to be fully present with whatever it is that I'm doing, rather than, running from thing to thing, or letting my brain get off onto something, that instead of being fully present in the moment. And so for me, it's about compartmentalizing, and also, and I'm still guilty of this, believe me, is just saying no and not over planning, and in fact, we rescheduled this because I felt like I just can't give this what I wanted to be able to give this time to you today. And so we rescheduled, because I just needed to know that I could be there. And so I think that modeling that it's a challenge, but it's important.
So true. So true. And it's hard. It takes practice. All of those things you're talking about takes practice to compartmentalize. It takes practice to be present when you're thinking about, I have deadlines, but it takes practice to play the trumpet too, doesn't it? Yeah. We're pretty good at practicing and mastering things. So before we ask you a little bit more, we got a minute or two here left. I just want to invite our listeners to think about how you can put some of these practices we've been talking about on these different episodes into practice in your own life. Welcome, Band Director Bootcamp listeners. If you're feeling a bit burnt out and are ready for support and accountability partners in your wellness and productivity, we have an amazing opportunity for you. Join our 90-day virtual bootcamp, a community initiative designed for busy band directors like you who love their job but seek a more sustainable approach. We'll meet weekly, discuss your wellness goals, and develop strategies to help you achieve them. We'll tackle productivity hacks and fine-tune systems for the upcoming school year. With 35 years of experience, I've got some tricks and tips up my sleeve that I can't wait to share. So, as we move into a new season of our lives, if you want to feel empowered and supported by like-minded individuals, this is your chance. Reach out to me at banddirectorbootcamp.com or click on the link in our show notes to schedule a 15-minute call. Let's ensure this is the right fit for you, get you signed up, and embark on this wellness journey together. Because together, we rise. All right, we are back with NAfME President Scott Sheehan for just a final moment here. And a passion of yours, among many of them, is to help sustain this profession and to make sure that music educators and children in this country have equitable access to music ed. In the last minute or so here, tell us about how our local, regional, state, and national associations can be here for us. Give maybe a couple specific examples.
Absolutely. Our theme of our National Assembly that just happened a couple of weeks ago is Together Towards Tomorrow. And that's really where we're headed. I think we're at this critical moment in time, and you alluded to this with the pandemic. We're out of there, but it is still a little weird. But we're close to feeling like the health scare at least is behind us, and schools are starting to adjust to what I call the new normal. But we're just on this cusp, right? Mm-hmm. And so I really think that now is that sweet spot where we can think about what we've learned through the pandemic and how technology can help and how we can embrace a lot of different aspects of music education. Not just performance, but responding and connecting and creating and composing and all those sorts of things. And so I think this is the sweet spot where we can look forward and do this together. And so to your point, yes, there's so many great things happening at the local levels and connecting with other music teachers. And I realize that looks differently in different parts of the country, right? It's a big country, and some people may be 200 miles to the next school, and others might be 2 minutes to the next school across town. And so, that idea of what local looks like can be very different. However, the state MEAs that are part of NAfME certainly provide a ton of resources, all sorts of pieces to look at as far as kind of coming out of the pandemic. And, I think there's so much value in conferences and connecting with other music teachers, whether you're a young teacher and finding a cohort or sort of like an affinity group, if you will, of teachers with similar aspirations or similar jobs and that sort of thing. The MEAs, the state level are doing that. And we are actually looking at some of this at the national level too. We started a small schools initiative to connect small schools teachers across the country. We just released a huge report from the Music Teacher Profession Initiative called the Blueprint for the Future of Music Education. And it really is a research-based, robust look at what it takes to get into a music program, get through, and then those supporting teachers in those first 5 years. So I would certainly direct listeners to check out that report, because there's not just to define the barriers and the challenges, but there are mitigation strategies and what can we do to support one another in there, and who are the stakeholders and who are the people that are going to help us to make these changes that we need to see. Because it's a lot. It's a lot. We're talking about repayment of school loans. We're talking about supporting during student teaching, all sorts of things. The mentoring that I was talking about, that is all in this report. So there's a lot happening, and I'm sure we're short on time, but I would definitely direct people to the NAfME website. There's so much there, and their state websites.
Yeah, all of that. And I love the theme Together Towards Tomorrow, because as we spoke before when the pandemic hit, I and probably every other music teacher was searching to our state and national leaders for what do we do. And you guys helped us figure it out. We're getting through the muck together. So right. Thank you. Thank you, Scott Sheehan, for your leadership, for your passion, your compassion, and for sharing your talents and time so generously with all of us. You are making such an amazing difference.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
All right, we're going to let Scott Sheehan go out and walk his dogs and be a dad here in a minute, but I want to say thank you to him and thank you to all you listeners who show up to Band Director Boot Camp, and you make a difference in kids' lives every day through the magic of music education. The work you do matters, and so do you. Join us next time on Band Director Boot Camp for another episode of productivity and wellness tips to make your life a little easier.